Chapter 2. The events of that night are still talked about to this day all over the county. Every Halloween, people talk about what has become referred to as the Great Calamity of Button Down. Hell, we actually had national folk here from far away as California. You may not see it as a big deal, but for us country folk here, out in the middle of nowhere, it was not only big, it was life-changing. And not in a good way, if you know what I mean. I still have this article written by Old Man Johnson from the BD Gazette the day after the events. It says, on All Hallows Eve, being October 31st, 1998, the small, shady community of Button Down, Indiana, was beset by some gruesome and terrifying tragedies. 5 townfolk lost their lives in a very strange and unusual circumstance. Sheriff Howell is sending for the state boys to come on down and see what they can make of it. Pastor Townsell is offering prayer service tonight at 7 o'clock over at the church. We're also inclined. More details to come as they are made available. God bless the families of the victims, and God watch over and bless us all. I also have an article from one of those highfalutin national newspapers. It simply states, tragedy unfolds in small-town America, Button Down, Indiana, population 5,000, has seen more murders in the last day, 5, than they have ever recorded in the 101-year history of the town. What is going on in Button Down, Indiana? That's all we got from them. I guess murder out in California is pretty routine. Remember hearing about a Black Dahlia chick that was murdered out there a long time ago. Found cut clean in half and butt naked. Guess they never did find that killer. So as we rounded the big lilac bush on the corner of my driveway, I almost ran face first into my arch nemesis, Chuck Bywater. He was this big fat drooly kid that I could never understand, who spit when he tried to talk. As he always did, Tommy stepped out in front and said, "Hey fat ass, did you eat all the soup in the soup kitchen or just the bread?" I didn't even know what a soup kitchen was, but I didn't care. Tommy protected me. He always protected me. Chuck spewed out something like, "Tommy ain't always gonna be there to touch you, Twiggy." That was another one of the nicknames I hated, Twiggy. Ugh! I yelled back, "Yeah, but even if he's not, you're too damn fat and too slow to catch me, Chuckles." With surprising stealthiness and agility, Chuck struck forward to cold cock me in the face. I was caught totally by surprise. Lucky for me, Tommy wasn't, and not only stopped Chuck's fist, but sent his own right between Chuck's eyes. What happened next was like slow motion replay. Chuck staggered backwards, a few steps, and then fell to the ground with a giant thud. I think the ground shook with the vibration. Blood started to protrude from his Superman mask and pooled on his neck. He was out, flat out, down for the count. I'm not entirely sure to this day, but I also think he may have pissed his pants as well. Things changed after that day between me and Chuck. In fact, we have been best friends ever since. I guess that's what happens when you go through what we went through later that night. Leaving Chuck to his own devices, we headed next door to Mrs. Lovick's house. I loved MMA, she liked to be called. She let me mow her lawn every Saturday all summer long just because of how much she knew I wanted that mask. She also had the coolest decorations in town. Her late husband Hank used to make them himself. He was a master wood carver and machinist. Dracula, the werewolf, Frankenstein, she had them all. It always creeped me out, but my favorite one was the mummy. They had a position right next to the front door. I remember one Halloween, Mr. Lubbock dressed in a mummy costume and stood there just like where they always put the fake one. He scared the hell out of me. He felt so bad after he bought me a new baseball glove, gift wrapped and all, and brought it over and delivered it personally to me. As usual, there it was, right in front, next to the door. I said to myself as I walked up, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid. Who was I kidding? I was scared to death. Tommy was a great friend and protector, but he always let me do this one alone. He always stood on the sidewalk and made me walk up alone to face the mummy. Kind of like he was making me face my fears alone, like maybe someday he just knew he wasn't always going to be there for me. Just as with every other year, I managed my way up to the door and rang the bell. And just as always, Emma May opened the door and said, "Made it another year, huh, Joey?" Joey, that was my favorite nickname. No one called me it before or after Emma May. That was our little secret. Then, as always, she would bring me into her house and back to the kitchen to give me the good goodies, as she liked to call them. Oh my lord, she could make homemade caramels. The best in the world. Tri-state champion for 25 years straight. Now she only makes them one time a year, and she only makes them for me. Did I mention I love Miss Lubbock? Looking back, it's so painful to think about now. How many of the people I loved that were taken away from me that night. Not only that they were taken away, but also the way it happened. Within 3 hours after my visit, sweet, loving, kind, compassionate Miss Lubbock would be found up on the mountain, gutted down to the bone with only her hands and feet left with any skin or meat. Her head was found floating in the creek the next morning. She didn't even have any eyes or ears, and her nose was bitten half off.